Hey everyone, Brian Christian here with Heavy Revy TV. I'm your host and I'm excited to be here again tonight. At last Thursday, my wife and I came on and we did a video together, a broadcast together, and it was wonderful. It was off the hook. It was about miscommunication. And we asked people, would you guys like to do a question or answers tonight? But we only got a couple people that threw out a couple topics, and so I didn't have a lot to choose from. So I'm going to encourage people, if you'd like a subject that I haven't done yet, or you have questions about, please comment on this video or send me a text or what have you. And I don't think I'm live. Huh. Am I live? No, I'm not live. I am live. Charlotte, am I live? This thing ain't showing me if I'm live. I'm looking at this thing and I'm going, oh no, I don't think I'm live. I got to check my phone. So, good evening again. Oh, I am live. Okay, good. It wouldn't show up as live, and so I'm sitting here going, wow, am I live? I keep clicking it. I keep starting all over. I thought I had a problem here, and it's still not showing up on my Facebook. Interesting. Are you watching me on YouTube? Oh, there I am. I am live now. Okay. Technical difficulties, guys. Well, I am excited about tonight. I'm going to be talking about striving and how important striving actually is. It's going to be an opposite message that most of you guys might not be used to hearing. Normally, when people talk about strife, they talk about how to cease from striving and grab hold of who you are. And the problem is people strive in trying to let go of their striving and grab hold of who they are. And so last Thursday, we had asked people if they had any questions that they'd like answers to. And one of the questions, I believe Danielle Wellman posted, was that how do you get out of the striving of trying to go in and deal with triggers? What do you do when you're tired of going within and dealing with triggers? And the quick answer is you do nothing. You do nothing. And doing nothing is probably the hardest thing for us as humans to do. But doing nothing is actually ceasing from striving. And but the thing is about striving is you can't intellectually or logically decide you're just not going to strive anymore. You don't get up one morning and say, I think I'll stop striving. And you just la-di-da, tiptoe through the tulips, and everything just flows perfectly. Doesn't work like that. Usually we'll have a couple days of denial where we've used that tactic as a form of denying what we're going through on the inside. And then we'll strive to not strive. And we'll try real hard to implement every methodology we've known that has truth in it, but we're doing it to escape something rather than to simply experience. And so, what if our whole journey is about experience? What if that's what it's really about? It's about experience, and it's not about getting to a finish line. We're always wanting to get to a finish line. So I want to read you a scripture here, and this is in Colossians chapter 2, and I'm going to read a lot of chapter 2 here is talking about the same thing. So I'm going to skip through and I'm going to read certain parts, but the whole chapter, it goes in alignment with what I'm going to share. And it says here in chapter 2, it says, he starts out by saying, Paul is speaking here, for I would that you knew what great conflict I have for you and for them at Laodicea, and for as many as have not seen my face in the flesh. Okay, so he's talking about conflict, and he says, verse 2, that their hearts might be comforted, being knit together in love, and unto riches of the full assurance of understanding, to the acknowledgement of the mystery of God and of the Father and of Christ, in whom are hid all the treasures of wisdom and knowledge. So, first and foremost, what we understand here is that this is about dealing with conflict. Paul is saying, hey, I want you to know about the great conflict I have had, all right, that I've had for you. Obviously, he's relating to some of the own conflict he's had in his life, or he wouldn't be able to relate to what's in somebody else's life. And he's now encouraging people to be knit together in love in the midst of conflict. All right. And then he talks about acknowledging the mystery of God. All right. And these mysteries are known as that which is hidden as treasures of wisdom and knowledge. So, first and foremost, you have to understand, if you're not getting the answer to your problem, it's because it is a mystery that is hidden. All right. So don't think it's strange that you don't have the antidote for your situation or the way of escape through all the striving to try to get through something or measure up in, or even to get free from performance by performing your way out of performance. And we do a lot of this, and we have to. We actually have to do that. There's nothing wrong with it because we have to do it, okay? But let me continue to read, okay? So in verse 3 again, in whom are hid all the treasures of wisdom and knowledge. And verse 4, and this I say, lest any man should beguile you with enticing words. All right? Good to see you, Kathy, and all those that are joining. And this I say, lest any man should beguile you with enticing words. Now, when you hear that term, any man beguiling you, you got to get your eyes off of just everyone around you. Yes, it comes that way, but it also comes from you. So you could also read it this way. And this I say, lest your own mindset should beguile you with enticing words. Okay? For though I be absent in the flesh, yet I am with you in the spirit, joying and beholding your order and the steadfastness of your faith in Christ. So, were they really steadfast? Not necessarily. There's plenty in the book of Colossians that he's speaking to where they're completely off. But that's not how Paul is telling them to see. He's seeing them as that which is filled with joy, order, and steadfastness. So we think our life is out of order, and yet everything that seems to be out of order is actually not your opponent or your opposition, but your opportunity and the catalyst for actually breaking through and coming to a place of rest. Yes, the mind is not convinced by its knowledge of study or its proclamation of confession. It is not convinced at an intentional level that that is true. It's not convinced. And so what we do is we adopt And again, I'm all for methods. I'm all for methodology. There's nothing wrong with placebo effects. There's nothing wrong with meditation, with breathing, with, visualizing the things of God, with speaking life, with speaking truth. But we have to understand, why are we doing it? What is the intention behind our pursuit? And I think what it comes down to is, wherever I think I'm lacking something, I'm going to try to fix myself through a methodology, and it's going to work a little bit until it doesn't work anymore. And it has to not work anymore, or we will build a religion around that methodology. Look at every denomination. Every denomination got a specific truth. They built the whole church around that one truth, and they camped out there and they never went beyond it. And in fact, they persecuted everything that wasn't of that truth. We do this in our own minds. It's called the high places. Remember Hezekiah? Hezekiah was a king, and when he became king, it says that he wanted to tear down the high places. He even pulled out of the Temple of Solomon the bronze serpent that God told Moses to make, that whoever would look at it would be healed after they were stung by the serpents. I think there's a lot of symbology and allegory there, but let me just give it to you from a literal standpoint for just a moment. He made this serpent on a pole, a picture of Christ, okay, a picture of the ego ascending to the mind of Christ and becoming animated with spiritual intention. Good to see you, Sandra. And so, just as the serpent was lifted up, so shall the Son of Man be lifted up. Your serpent, your ego, is going to eventually enter heavenly mindedness. It's going to be lifted up, but it's going to go through a process. It's going to eat dust all the days of its life, through the duality process. But eventually you're going to ascend in your mindset, in your perspective, in discerning intentions into the hidden knowledge and wisdom of the mystery of God, by understanding the whole purpose of striving. Okay. And so understanding the purpose of striving is important. Your mind has conclusions of where it's been, how things really are based on that lens. Those conclusions, if they are not dealt with and uncovered and flipped over and transmuted into the Father's perspective of the purpose or the reason why you went through, or what you went through, walked through what you walked through, if that doesn't happen, those conclusions become false expectations. Those false expectations tempt us to grab a methodology and strive with it to get away from something we think is off, and therefore it has to backfire. Otherwise, we will continue to hide from our pain, from the lies that we believed about ourselves. And so this is where the enticing words and beguiling comes in, okay? And then when you read on in verse 6, 7, and 8, and 9, it says this: as you have therefore received Christ Jesus the Lord, so walk in him. Now, when it's saying that, it's not saying as your personal experience in your past lens of false expectation, as you've received Christ in that place, walk in him. No, it's as you've received Christ as he is. This is the Father's perspective of receiving Christ, which is you embracing you, okay? So walk in him, rooted and built up in him, and established in the faith, as you have been taught, abounding therein with thanksgiving. Beware, here we go again, lest any man spoil you through philosophy and vain deceit, after the tradition of men, after the rudiments of the world, and not after Christ. For in him dwells all the fullness of the Godhead bodily. Verse 10, and you are complete in him, which is the head of all principality and power. Let's keep going. In whom also you are circumcised with the circumcision made without hands. So if you think you're going to add anything to your life Good to see you, Angel. If you think you're going to add anything to your life, guess what? It's a circumcision made without hands. What this is telling me here is that the proclamation of, as you have therefore received Christ, this revelation of receiving Christ is saying that you are rooted and built up in him, not going to be. You are established in the faith, not going to be. You have been taught. 1 John 2:20 says you have an unction from the Holy One and you know all things, okay? And in this reality, you abound with thanksgiving, okay? In this place, you will be aware of philosophy and vain deceit, and you won't keep falling for the same thing, all right? But we've got to fall for it long enough for our mind to record the experience that our methodology failed us from the intention of trying to escape something to attain something. You're not here to escape anything or to attain anything. You are simply here to experience everything. But you can't live in that experience in a neutral place if you think that you're missing something, that something can be stolen from you, that you're threatened by something, okay? You can't. You will have to go here, try this, move here, get rid of that, stop this, do that. Now, again, guess what we're going to do? We're all going to do those things until our knowledge of doing them intellectually, which caused us to grab hold of because of a conclusion that we can't deal with and we want to escape pain from the past, what do we end up doing? We end up putting on something to escape something. We have to do this and we have to experience failure in it. It has to fail. In other words, you have to have fruit that feels good for about a week and then it's gone. And then you're going, I thought I dealt with this. I thought I gave this up. I thought God said I was done with that. No, 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 no. It's not about the inconsistency of God. It's not about you didn't do it right. It's about you're going to strive till you can't strive no more, because the mind will not relinquish its right to manage its pain until the pain management fails. Then it throws in the towel, and when the towel is thrown in, that's when, guess what? You cease from your own works as God did from his. All right? Remember it says that? I think, let me turn there for a second. I want to say it's in Hebrews. Hebrews chapter, I want to say chapter 4. It's either chapter 3 or chapter 4. I think it's chapter 4. And so it starts it in chapter 3 about entering the rest of God. And it says in chapter 4, let us therefore fear, lest the promise being left us, entering into his rest, any of you should seem to come short of it. Now, that word fear is not to be afraid, because that's what we end up doing when we strive. We strive because of fear. We have fear because we have a conclusion. In order to not feel that fear or recognize that conclusion, we set up a false expectation to manipulate ourselves. Okay. And so the fear here is not dealing with fear that causes torment. It is God's fear, or the fear of the Lord, which is what? The beginning of wisdom. In other words, you've woken up to something deeper than what you are currently struggling and striving to obtain. All right. You've woken up to a completely different place of grace. And the fear of the Lord, which is not to judge by eyes or ears, as it says in Isaiah 11, which is talking about the seven spirits of God. But when it's talking about that, it says that it doesn't judge by eyes or ears, but in righteousness. In other words, it's discerning from the inside what's going on around you. And that discernment is dealing with intentions. Okay. And so the fear of the Lord is to discern God's intentions, or the why behind the what, the purpose of why you are where you are. And the why is not because you didn't do it right, you failed. Okay, there are secondary things there. So I'm not throwing that out completely, as in we don't have any accountability here. But the initial thrust into coming out of striving begins when we realize all is well with my soul. Everything is good. Everything that's happening right now is actually working for my good. Okay. I want to bring something simple tonight, but yet profound, because if once we understand and we've been through it enough times, how many times have you been in a situation where you threw a fit, you did all the praying, all the fasting, all the decreeing, and it didn't change one thing? And then eventually it changed on its own. It just happened one day. It didn't happen when you prayed. It just happened. And you're like, wow, it finally happened. And you're wondering, going, and everybody says it's God's timing. It's God's timing. And yes, I do believe in a thing called timing, but the timing is dealing with our perception. Okay. That's the only timing, since there is no time, and God is outside of time and space. And yes, we live in a virtual reality timeline, and God does move through it, but it's not an actual reality. It's a mindset. Okay. And so when we get the revelation and we redeem the time, we now begin to bypass the striving and we enter into the rest. Okay. But it goes on here in chapter 4. And it says in verse 3, for we which have believed do enter into the rest. As he said, as I have sworn in my wrath, they shall not enter my rest, as I have sworn in my passionate pursuit of them. All right. And then, and it says, although the works were finished from the foundations of the world. Okay. And it goes on, and it talks about different sides of rest. It's talking about the seventh day. Verse 10, for he that is entered into his rest has also ceased from his own works, as God did from his. Let us labor, therefore. Almost sounds like a contradiction. So I have to labor, but I have to cease from my works. So how do I labor without work? Well, laboring without work is true labor. It's a labor where Jesus said, take my yoke upon you. Come to me, all you who are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke, for my yoke is easy and my burden is light. Okay. So what he's basically saying there is he's talking about, and you can see this in his own life, where Jesus did not struggle or strive to accomplish anything in his life. He simply was in the moment, recognizing what the Father was doing that was good. And he was aware, in the midst of that, he was able to answer people's mindsets. He was able to answer dilemmas. So we're trying to get an answer to our dilemma rather than finding the purpose of the dilemma that wants to unlock the answers without you needing to look for them. All right. And I know that it might put some of you on a new path as I'm sharing this, to try to obtain what I'm saying now. And the only way you're going to obtain it is when you run out of gas. When you run out of gas, it's called exhausting the ego, exhausting the ability to measure up, exhausting all of our performance, exhausting everything that we've taken pride in our own ability to be spiritual. Okay. We really don't need that. This realm wasn't about ability. This realm has nothing to do. Overcoming has nothing to do with you trying to overcome. Overcoming is a revelation of being complete. This is what I read here when we go back to Colossians. Let me go back to Colossians here. And I'm getting pretty whacked in the glory right now. In Colossians, you are rooted and built up in him, established in the faith, abounding therein with thanksgiving. You've been taught fully and completely who you are as spirit. All right. that you are in the fullness of the Godhead in bodily form. You are complete in him, which is the head of all principality and power. That word principality comes from the word principle, which is a perception. It is a principle, the way in which we perceive. A power is the implementation of our perception in the way in which we manifest or act upon. Okay? So he has exalted himself, which is also us. You are complete in him, which is the head of all perceptions and enablements behind those perceptions, or that which drives you to measure up within your own perception. All right. And you were circumcised without hands. All right. Let me read a little bit more. Verse 12, buried with him in baptism, risen with him through the faith of the operation of God, who has raised him from the dead, and you being dead in your sins, or you being asleep in a mistaken identity, and the uncircumcision of your flesh, that's dealing with the veil, striving, okay? He is already quickened with him, and you have been completely forgiven of all trespasses. Not that God ever held anything against you, but we did. We held things against ourselves. And so what's going on here is that there is nothing held against you. God is not disappointed with you. So why are you disappointed with yourself? All the handwriting of ordinances that was against us in our own minds, this is all dealing with your own mind. He already blotted out the handwriting of ordinances that was against us, which was contrary to us, took it out of the way, nailing it to the cross, and again spoiled principalities and powers, and made a show of them openly, triumphing over them in it. Let no man therefore judge you in meat or in drink or in respect to holy days or a new moon or of the Sabbath days, which are a shadow of things to come, but the body is of Christ. Again, let no man beguile you of your reward in voluntary humility. Isn't it amazing that we volunteer to humble ourselves? And this is called beguiling you in voluntary humility and worship of angels, intruding into those things which he has not seen, vainly puffed up by his fleshly mind, and not holding to the head, from which all the body by joints bands, having nourished, ministered, and knit together, increases with the increase of God. Wherefore, if you are dead to the rudiments of the world, why, as though living in the world, are you subject to ordinances? Touch not, taste not, handle not, which are all to perish with the using after the commandments and doctrines of men, which things have indeed a show of wisdom and will worship and humility and neglecting of the body, not in any honor to the satisfying of the flesh. Okay, so reading all that, I know that was a lot to read, but I wanted you to see here that this is not just bound to the traditions of legalism like we have categorized it, but our hidden legalism, which is our false expectation in any spiritual methodology in which we're trying to put it on to escape something else. Totally wrong reason for any methodology. It will fail, and it has to fail. You have to fail over and over again until every aspect of intention is brought subject to the realization that you are holding fast to the head, that there is an increase of the increase of God with everything you can't do right. Everything you can't do right. Paul said it this way, I boast in my weaknesses that the power of Christ may rest on me. I boast in my infirmities, right? He talks about that. All right. So this chapter is a really good chapter to meditate on with who you already are. This is the mindset of those that have come out of striving. The mindset of those that have come out of striving realize they're already in. You're in the Father's hand. Nobody can pluck you out. Everything that's coming against you is only coming against your conclusion of you, that is there to remove the false expectation that can't happen with verbal speaking. God could show up face to face with you and he could verbally tell you, you don't need to strive anymore. I love you. And that's not going to change one thing about your striving. You're going to feel good for a week. You're going to be on cloud nine. And then there's going to be a situation that's going to rise up that's going to be mirroring some situations in the past. And that lens that is still there, in which your past has not been reconciled, is going to come forward and either try to strive through it, rebuke it, do warfare against it, speak against it, ignore it, try to escape it, you know. And so, just like what Grace just said here, I'm going to put this up here. She says, we are not praying to come into the life that he is, but realizing the life we are in him. That's amazing right there. And that is the truth. Life is ever present, Grace also said, and so there is no delay because there is no time. You are simply conscious of this human experience. You are walking through this matrix that you and I in God help design to resist who we're not, to manifest who we are. And so to answer the question from Monday that Danielle had, what do I have to do, or what do I do when I'm just sick and tired of going inward to deal with triggers? Don't do it. Do nothing. How do you do nothing? Well, you can't, can you? You can't just do nothing. Let's be honest, guys. We've tried it, and then we just try to convince, no, I'm going to make myself believe that I'm going to just deliver myself out of this without having to face myself. What are we afraid of with facing myself? Yeah, that's right, Charlotte. You got to be exhausted enough to yield. Remember, the discipline of the Lord yields the peaceable fruit. So your yielding is really simply beholding the fruit. The fruit is already there. The fruit of the Spirit is your nature. The fruit of the Spirit isn't something you produce. The fruit of the Spirit is your nature. And when you realize your nature, it begins to manifest outwardly and appears as fruit producing, but you're just emanating you, and you're creating your world outside of a strife world. Okay? If the worlds are framed with the word of God, let me go back here. I'm going to switch gears for a second here. Let's go back to Hebrews for just a minute. Okay, let me just give you a quick rundown of the faith of God here. Okay, faith. Now, faith is not. You got to understand this. Faith is not something you can claim. That's mental assent. So when I hear something, and when I hear it, I'm going through something in my life I can't stand, I want to get out of. And I'm like, I just want this over. And then somebody speaks something, and I'm like, yeah, that's it. And I jump on the bandwagon, and I'm gonna go do that. And guess what? That's not faith. That's escapism. Faith never has to jump on anything to get out of something. Faith is you looking back and seeing the purpose and the goodness of God historically that allows you to rest and let the Father do the works. All right. Now, that doesn't mean that we don't implement some of these things, like dealing with triggers. I do a training on how to posture. Okay. But this posture has to come into a place. It first has to strive. If you're doing it on your own, if you come to me, I'm going to help you get through it. You won't be striving. But when you try to do it on your own, it can feel like striving, okay? Because usually what's happening is we're trying to get out of our pain rather than embrace it, all right? So it has to backfire. But we do need to face our past. We need to see our past from the Father's perspective, that it was all on purpose for a purpose, and we really weren't injured as much as we think we are, okay? The ego was injured, the ego was wounded, but who you are has never been wounded. Who you are has never been tainted. Who you are has never been polluted. It's that simple, okay? But in Hebrews, it talks about faith. And it says, now faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. So you didn't see it while you were in it, but in hindsight, you're looking back and you're seeing the evidence of the substance of faith that has given you hope through purpose. Okay? And it says, for by it the elders obtained a good report. I want you to see this in the context of what I just said. You getting hindsight of your journey in the perspective of the Father and of grace, of goodness, guess what? That is faith. That's a faith that can't be moved because it has evidence. But the evidence of things not seen isn't saying that you have evidence you can't see. It's saying that you have evidence that you didn't see in the when you were trying to claim it, but after you stopped striving and you gave up, and then all of a sudden the answer came and everything came into alignment. It came after the fact as you look back and realize that everything you were walking through and striving in was actually making room for the rest, was making room for the proof, and that's the place of faith. Through faith, we understand that the worlds were framed by the word of God, so that the things which are seen were not made of things which do appear. Okay? That one can be kind of hard to interpret there, but when you put it in this context, let me put it this way. Now faith is, that's the realization that that your journey was all in alignment the whole time. Now faith is, verse 2, for by it the elders obtained. So you've got to experience hindsight and realizing all your striving was aiding you to come to the end of that ego so that you could actually enter a place of a new point of view in why things happen the way they happen and why it's actually all good. When that transpires, faith is by you, kind of like the kingdom upon you, the kingdom within you, the kingdom at hand. All right? That which brings you subject to truth through the crushing process or through the contradictions, through the striving, that which you partner with in the flow of it because you now got it and are now, working with the Father, partnering with the Father, and that which is bubbling out of you as a result of that, your spirit is now released to simply be. And in the being, there's all kinds of doing you can do that is no longer doing to be something, but doing because you are something. And that doing is not striving. It's not performance. It's called the adventure, having an experience of exploration. Okay, you are now simply exploring. It's a childlike wonder that simply enjoys the interactions of life. Okay. All right. I'm not there yet in a lot of this. I am there in a lot of it at the same time. Okay. And this is where I am focusing my energy is anytime I find myself trying to do something and it's backfiring, I take a step back and I try to just, as Charlotte said, be in the stillness. All right, be in the stillness. See, Barbara's tracking with me. You were prophesying something similar today to somebody. That's awesome. And so this is what we've got to do now. Through faith, we understand that everything in our world was framed by the Word of God. And when it's saying the Word of God, it's framed with who you are in God. Okay? The Word became flesh in Jesus. The Word becomes flesh in everybody. Okay? He is the example of how all humanity was sent from eternity into time. The Word became flesh. You are the Word that does not return void, okay, but is sent to accomplish everything you were sent to accomplish and to prosper in it. So when you think you're not prospering, you are actually on the verge of unveiling prosperity. When you think you're never going to get your breakthrough, you are in the process of breaking for the breakthrough. Okay? This is all on purpose, for a purpose. Now, if I was to keep reading about faith here, so through faith, we understand that our world, our life was framed with the reality that everything that is happening is actually working for good. All right. So that the things which are seen were not made of things which do appear. Now, what that is saying is, I didn't attain it through the striving. I didn't attain it through my own ability to measure up. I simply unveiled it through realizing I didn't need to measure up. And it's a realization that comes after we're finished striving. Now, let's look at another way that this is unveiled. All right? By faith, Abel offered unto God a more excellent sacrifice than Cain, by which he obtained witness that he was righteous, God testifying of his gifts, and by it, he being dead, speaks. Now, we don't need to sacrifice anything, for God is not in the business of sacrifices. Okay? He doesn't prefer sacrifices, we read in other places. So what is it talking about here? How can this apply to us? We know the story of what Abel experienced here, but what is the sacrifice and what is it really about? It's not about a blood sacrifice. All right? It's about how we start out sacrificing to believe we're righteous. That's where we start out. We start out under our own little laws in which we define righteousness and spirituality based on our spiritual gymnastics to obtain. This is where we start out. See, we start out offering a sacrifice and always comparing it to somebody else's and making sure that ours is superior to theirs. Isn't that where we start out? Oh, brother, you don't need to do that no more. That's religious. Do this instead. Oh, no. You're not dealing with demons. You're dealing with lower frequencies. You're dealing with alien entities that aren't of God. So now it's not demons, it's just alien entities. All right. Guess what we're still dealing with? Something separate from ourselves, something that we don't want to face. Everything you don't want to face that you blame as separate from yourself is yourself that you don't want to face. Okay? And we have to start to face it. Okay, verse 5, by faith Enoch was translated that he should not see death and was not found because God had translated him. For before his translation, he had this testimony that he pleased God. Well, how come it doesn't tell you what Enoch did? Why isn't there a whole list of, okay, these are the things that Enoch did to please God? Well, it actually does in the following verse, but you don't see it in Genesis. You don't see a lot because there wasn't a lot to do to please God because God was always pleased. Isn't that a concept? That God is actually in constant bliss and joy and glory and ecstasy. It's a constant inhale and exhale of consuming love that doesn't ever question you or who you are. It's really beautiful, actually. So what is this translation referred to? It's showing that when we come out of the place of sacrificing, comparing, and competing through our false expectations and striving, that we eventually translate to a completely another level. We come out of our sacrifices through sacrificing, and we decide we're done with sacrificing, and that's where we begin to level up. When we start to level up, we realize how we're pleasing to God. And then it says, verse 6, but without faith, it is impossible to please him. What did I say about faith? Without faith, it's impossible to please him. Now, does that mean God isn't pleased? No. That means your interpretation of how you view God's disposition towards you will be unpleasing. You will always think you could have done more. You should have done more. You're going to do better next time. I want to break this off of you. This mentality is not positive thinking. Yes, it will motivate you to get up and do something about your life. But in the end, it will only produce defeat, sorrow, disappointment, because of the false expectations that are attached to it. Okay? I'm hoping you guys are getting something from this. And then it says here that this is where it describes, because remember, faith is you seeing your intentions from the Father's perspective, which means you've seen your past without regret. You now see it as you'd do it again. You'd walk through the exact same past and not change a thing, right? And so when we get to that place, and if we're not to that place, just strive and just plan on it. It's okay. Realize, okay, I'm in this methodology. I can't face this. So I'm going to confess this, pray this, stand on this, sacrifice this, do that. It's okay. Do it. Do it. But do it knowing that it's actually going to come to an end and that it's going to be meaningless and that you're not going to lose anything in it, because it actually wore out that part of your mindset, and that part of your mindset can now begin to see something glorious in your life. Because for me, this is how it worked. I would do. I would experience a level of victory. Then I would judge everybody else that didn't measure up to that level of spirituality, especially if I preached it to them and they weren't doing it, or I taught a series on it and they didn't do it. So then I'd have to punish them, with a different message of how they didn't measure up and how they need to, do the works of God. God confirms the word with signs following. You better get out there and do something. He ain't going to do something until you do something. And so you got to draw near to God for him to draw near to you. And I would put out all of this religious stuff. This is back in the early days. And I would compare and compete. But guess what would happen? Not long after, I'd find myself in the very thing that I just judged somebody else for, that I had previously gotten victory over and thought I had the key to it all. And I would sink, and I wouldn't want to preach on that no more, because now I believed I was a hypocrite. And so I would stay off certain subjects now, because if I can't preach from it, because now I'm a hypocrite. But I wouldn't even see myself as judging others. I still didn't see that. Okay, that's the fruit it produced. It was striving. What does it say about when we constantly have fights and striving? Are you not yet carnal? Aren't you still in your mind carnal, fighting, competing? All right. So in order to have faith here, it gives you the ingredients. For he that comes to God must believe that he is. That he is. Now, when it says he is, this is more than just, I believe in God, I believe God is real. He is in the very situation you think you need to be delivered from. He is in that situation. He is in everything you're going through internally. He's there. And if he's there and he hasn't just came down and plucked it off of you, it means that there is a benefit to being in that situation that is needed for you to actually step into all the things you've been longing to walk in. And you won't get it without it, okay? See, this makes it easy. It really makes it easy. See, God made it so easy that we didn't even have to deliver ourselves out of anything. All we had to do was embrace it, let the recognize that he is. And it goes on and it says, and that he is a rewarder of them that diligently seek him. Now that diligent seeking part there can fool you into believing that you've got to perform. Oh, I got to go seek God. No, that's not what it means. To diligently seek God, that word seek means to realize him. Realize him not just in hoping you realize him, but in realizing the reality of God in that present situation. So in other words, like David said, when he said in Psalms, the Lord spoke to me and said, seek my face. And I said, your face, Lord, will I seek. Another Psalm, he says, I am ever before his face. So seeking his face is actually becoming aware that I don't need to be delivered out of this thing that I'm afraid to face, that I need to be in it so I can deal with the fear and I can face it. All right? It doesn't feel good. The mind will come up with all kinds of reasons why we just can't go there. We just can't do it. We just can't cut it. Maybe later, God, but right now I'm sensing the Spirit's telling me to do this. Do it. It's okay. People are going to come and they're going to try to tell you, don't do this, do that. Watch out for the vain philosophies. Now, it's okay if you get instruction, because some of the instruction I give, people go out, they try to do it. I've trained on the shift, and people go out and I'm gonna do it on myself. I'm gonna do it on myself. And eventually you will. Eventually it'll become automatic. But in the beginning, it's really hard to think about what's going on and then let go of thinking and feel and still be able to remember what you previously thought so that you can feel. It's a little tough at first. That's why we do sessions. That's why I tell people, give me a call. We'll set up a session. All right. And, there are seasons of this. There's a season for everything under the heavens. And every season leads into the next season. Everything you've walked through has prepared you for this moment. You ain't prepared for the next moment. This moment is preparing you for the next moment. So don't get ahead of yourself. Doesn't really matter. All right. So remember here, faith is discerning your journey. That's what gives you hope, and to see the evidence of things you didn't see before, but you see now. It causes you to relax and cease to try to work these things out and enter into the rest. Now, the rest will allow you to work out your salvation with fear and trembling, for it's God that works in you to will and to do of his good pleasure. If you notice there, the emphasis is on God working in you, willing and doing of his good pleasure. All right. Working out is you simply beholding God is. All right. And he is rewarding me because I've realized him and I realize what he's actually doing. I've realized his purpose, the intention, what's actually happening here. I've realized that the Father is actually in what I thought was a catastrophe and a mess. All right. If you can train yourself to just remember that just remember that. Every time a trial comes up, this is not an opposition, this is an opportunity. Okay? This is my deliverer, not my conqueror. Okay? And so we then begin to realize him and we begin to see the reward. And the reward that is coming is the side effect of everything we thought was actually destroying us, which was only breaking off of us the trauma-based conclusions about ourselves. Okay? Realigning emotion, thought, perception, conclusion, removing that conclusion. Okay? So you go from these processes. So when you look at faith as a sacrifice, you eventually burn out and you begin to come to faith that begins to renew your mind, to give you the ability of hindsight. That now leads you to verse 7. By faith, Noah, being warned of God of things not seen as yet, moved with fear, prepared an ark to the saving of his house, by which he condemned the world and became heir of the righteousness which is by faith. Okay? So what you'll find here is Abel represents us striving to do something, to be something in a mental assent that we think is faith, so we can claim righteousness and compare and compete with others. That's our striving faith, which begins to lead us to a new level of perspective, which is the renewal of the mind faith. We begin to renew our mind, which then begins to lead us to be seeing things ahead of time, because now we're not going to try to build something out of escaping something, because we've renewed our mind through a translative state. And so we're no longer trying to build something to escape something. We're now building something because we're secure. And so now we're able to be warned of things not yet seen. And warned doesn't always mean a negative. You could say be moved to do this, moved to do that. All right. You just step out, like my wife and I, hey, I'm sensing you're supposed to quit your job and we're supposed to go on the road without any financial support or any connections. Let's go. So we did, because we had faith that had proved itself by looking back. All right. And now I could rest and know that I wasn't trying to pull a fast one on myself to try to do something, to be something, to prove that I'm the man of God, kind of thing that a lot of people are still doing. All right. And so we enter into that place in which we're able to prepare. There's preparations made now. Now you're ahead. You're 5 steps ahead. All right. And you're able to see things ahead of time. And you're able to enter into becoming an heir of these things. You begin to partake of the inheritance, which also means provision begins to manifest. Provision for the vision. So faith begins to get vision with Noah, while faith begins to wake up to reading between the lines with intention with Enoch. But yet we needed Abel to strive to get to Enoch, to get to Noah. You follow me thus far, okay? But then we come to Abraham. And verse 8 says, by faith, Abraham, when he was called to go out into a place which he should after receive for an inheritance, obeyed and went, not knowing where he was going. I love this, because when you enter into that realm of faith, which is really you entering into rest, all of these levels except Abel is the rest of God, which is really the product of the faith of God, which is rest. And this is where you enter into that ultimate rest, where you can just simply go and you don't need instruction. See, in the Noah realm, you still are a little bit reliant on the need for a structure and a strategy. And you will have seasons of that you'll bounce back and forth. So it's not like it's less than, but there is a higher realm, and that is not knowing where you're going, because you don't need to know. You're okay with not knowing, and you just obey and go. You're just flowing because you're living from a place of simply wanting to experience God in all things. You're simply living in a place, and we all forget this, okay? And it's okay. I'm going to let you know, it's okay to forget who you are. Because the next time, because it's wired for you to forget. You are wired to forget so that you can remember, so that you can forget, so that you can remember. And the reason why it's wired that way is because once you wake up, and you'll notice this in your life, think about some of the past experiences you've had where you woke up to an amazing truth, right? And you worked it, and you flowed in it, and you prospered in it, right? Or you strived in it and failed in it, and then it just kind of worked. But eventually you saw the fruit of it. But then what happened? You started to lose your inspiration in that truth, right? It's like, okay, I already done that. I'm ready for something new. Why? You got bored with that truth. It was no longer relevant to you in that season or moment, because you had just finished that season and moment. And it's time now to come to a higher place rather than staying only at one level of understanding, okay? So this is why we constantly upgrade, right? And when you're in a place in which you don't need to know where you're going, and you don't need to know what you need to believe, that is the place where the treasures of heaven and the deep things of God are revealed to you, because there's room for it outside of your own conclusion. Where there's no conclusion, there's no reclusion, which is to pull back. There is no exclusion, right? What does it say? A man plans his way, but the Lord directs his steps. So we can have plans that fail. Does that mean that our steps are still not being, that our steps aren't directed? Our steps are being directed through every point. Every point. You can give all kinds of counsel to people, I used to get upset at this, man. They asked for counsel. They said, I'm going to do it. They didn't, they tried it. They quit. They didn't try again. I'm like, I don't want to counsel people. They don't want to listen. They can't listen. All they can do is be hooked by the counsel to strive, because they're trying to get an answer to get out of a dilemma rather than asking the right question, which is, help me to find the goodness of the Father in that which I have thought wasn't God. Can you help me find that He is, and that what I'm walking through is producing the reward because I have diligently, or with all of my heart, mind, body, and strength, recognized this is God. Okay? And I agree, Barbara. I get bored real fast as well. And so we are, that's right, Annabelle. We are going from glory to glory, but we're not going on a timeline from glory to glory. That's how we see it in our humanity. We're actually ever before His face, and veils are just lifting, glory to glory to glory to glory, in this interaction with God. All right? You know, when you recognize the goodness of God, have you ever been in an experience where you're in it, you're going through it, you're hopeless, you're upset, you're angry, you feel like you just got duped, and all of a sudden you just realize God's goodness, and it all just kind of parts, it just goes away. It's just like, wow, well, that went away. And you thought, oh, I just focused on this. And then the next time something comes around, you start claiming the goodness. God, you're good, because last time it worked automatically. Now you're going to claim it, and it doesn't work, because the first time you did it, you accidentally, not consciously, you accidentally tapped into reality. You tapped into the reality that everything was good. But now your intellect tried to grab hold of that to say, we'll save that for later, when we don't want to face something that we really don't like about ourselves or want to feel about ourselves. So we'll save that for later. And the next time it won't work. It has to backfire. Otherwise, all we would do is just build another Tower of Babel, right? And so every time we build that tower, we're trying to get closer to God. We're trying to ascend. God shows up and confuses it and scatters it. It's got to be scattered. It's all part of the process. So I want to encourage you, where you have opinions that fight dominion, you will strive until you cannot strive no more. And that striving will bring you to the end of that opinion by proving it doesn't work. We have to prove it doesn't work. Doesn't matter how much we know it doesn't work. You might know all you know that it doesn't work. You will subliminally sabotage yourself until you wake up to the reality experientially that hitting that wall, I can't seem to knock this wall over, rushing it, hitting my head against it. I'm just hurting my head. I got a headache now. It ain't doing nothing. There ain't even a dent on the wall. Right? And then you learn to rest. You learn to sit. You learn to do nothing. Doing nothing is really important. I'll finish with this. Doing nothing doesn't mean passivity. Doing nothing means to step away from what you're trying to obtain or strive to do or force to work. Sit back and ask yourself, what is the Father doing? What do I need to see here that is beyond me getting this accomplished, that the Father's trying to reveal to me? What is being highlighted here? Not about what do I need to know to get this done? No. Forget about what do I need to know to get this done. It's what do I need to know to stop trying to get this done? Because it's not working here. So there's obviously a reason, and it's more than just a timing thing. There's so many layers to this. So drink that in, guys, and realize that rest is you simply being neutral in a place of realizing that wholeness is your reality, and that everything that seems to be working against you is working for you, so that you can manifest that in every aspect of your life. Probably one of the most relaxing messages I've ever ministered. And again, you're going to try to do nothing. And guess what's going to happen? I got to do something. Go do. Go do and let it tutor you until you're done doing. What does the law do? It tutors you till you come to faith, right? The law tutored them until they came to faith. What is the law for us? Every law you put upon yourself, a false expectation that comes out of past conclusion, where you didn't measure up, where you weren't good enough, where somebody did try to control you, where where there's trauma. You can't just, okay, that's a conclusion, I let go of it. Nope. You need a situation that matches with your past conclusion, that looks like you're being duped again, and you need to be able to relinquish your right to survival tools in that moment so that, boom, the answer can come outside of your ability to measure up, and all of a sudden you begin to realize, right? That's right. I love that, Christy. I'm going to put that up there. She says it's amazing to do nothing and realize that is where you are supposed to be. Hard, but freeing. It is so true. You got to do nothing. You got to do nothing. What is the Father doing? Well, I don't see God doing anything in my life right now. Go and do likewise. He's really showing you, you just need to rest. Everything's complete. There's nothing wrong with you. You're not lacking anything. I'm going to starve those belief systems that believe they lack. I'm going to starve those mindsets that believe they need to prove themselves, right? As Kathy just said, I'll encourage people when people are, they're just, man, I've been pressing in. God told me I was going to get a breakthrough today, and I've been pressing in, and I just need a word. I don't know what to do. I'll tell them, go watch a movie. I'll say, stop pressing in. Go for a walk. Go roller skating. Go do something fun. Forget about trying to be spiritual. Simply go about your life and look for the goodness of God. Okay? All creation declares his glory, and all creation is groaning. And the groaning is actually the sound of glory, but we think it's the sound of pain and suffering. See, the Spirit is searching all the inward parts, right? He's making intercession, right? Our spirit is making intercession, right? What is that intercession? Searching all the parts. It's taking all the inward infirmities, the negative beliefs, the negative emotional and mental infirmities about ourselves, and that internal dialogue in which we think we're stuck and tempting us to strive and get somewhere. And it's using the external groaning to press against it and to surface it and to say, hey, I can't strive no more. I'm done. I'm throwing in the towel. I ain't gonna try to do this no more. I'm just gonna sit and let God be good. Let the faithfulness of God happen. And you'll find that after you settle into that, what's gonna happen is that's when you'll be given the Noah faith, or the Noah realm, which is you'll be given the strategy to build something. You'll start to build things with people. And all of a sudden, you'll start to get keys for others. And you'll start to flow, and you'll start to release. And that which begins to come out of you will begin to aid people. Now, they will take it, and some of them will hear it in the striving mindset, in which they'll strive to do it until they fail and fail and fail. And then they'll learn to boast in their infirmities, that the power of Christ may rest on them. Okay? And then they will also begin to outflow. And then this leads you into being able to just move in a fluid way, in a neutral way, to where you no longer need to hold on to any specific truth, because you're just simply living in a place of the embrace of love and grace. Okay. So this is kind of how the process, hopefully I presented this in a way that you guys grasp what I was saying. And so go back, listen to this if you haven't got a chance to watch it all. But I am excited. I'm excited for this new year. Happy New Year 2023. I really believe that there's going to be a lot going on this year. Another set of adjustments are coming. And those adjustments are going to halt. I saw the word halt And it was almost like the yield sign that you see on the road, but it said halt. And I saw that when it came to the striving and the trying to measure up, even in areas of the mystical. All right. And it was like you're going to halt in your striving this year. I saw that the other day, halt, the word halt. So I see some things the Father's going to halt in people's lives. And the end of the matter is going to be good. The end of the matter is going to be good. There's going to be a lot emphasized. I'm going to do another video on what I see for 2023 this Thursday morning. Next Thursday morning, I will do a video on that, and we'll talk about what's been happening, what happened in 2022 in the spirit, as we're now looking back, and what's the potential for 2023, and what the Father is unveiling, and it's going to be good. So don't miss Thursday morning, 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And don't forget to visit our website right there at www.foggm.org. And we appreciate all those. Again, we want to thank all those that have been a blessing to us, that finance us and help support us, whether it be through shift sessions, marriage counseling, and these broadcasts. But you enable us to keep doing what we're doing full time and being able to minister to people on the phone and online throughout the whole day, as well as traveling as we prepare to travel this spring. Lord willing, I'm saying Lord willing because we just don't know yet how everything's going to unfold, but we're going to go not knowing where we are going and see what the Father's going to do. But we just thank you for all that you've done. If you'd like to donate, you can do that at our website. We appreciate it. It helps us to continue to live out of the RV and to continue to travel and to prepare to travel. So we appreciate you guys, and I hope you guys had a wonderful Christmas. I know we did. We had an amazing Christmas. It was off the hook. We're living in the moment of being family, and of course the kids, they had all kinds of presents. People sent presents, and it was wonderful. But my wife and I, we don't really buy each other presents. I did get her some house shoes, but we don't really care about that. For us, we care about the kids having fun. But for us, it's like we are each other's presents. We just care about being together. We just love living in the moments and being together. And, for those of you that are 50 and over, you know what I mean. As you begin to get older, you begin to live in the moment. Time just seems to be going by faster and faster. And so you just live in the moment. All right. We ain't got time to be striving about trying to get somewhere, trying to attain something. In the end, none of that matters. All that matters is living in the moment, folks. So this is the year where you're going to learn to live in the moment. This is the year of the realization of the present tense presence. Live in the moment. Amen. Anyway, I love you guys. You have a wonderful evening, and I will see you guys Thursday morning at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. God bless y'all. Love you. Bye-bye for now.